Artificial intelligence is on the rise, and experts in the field are concerned about a lack of governance and regulation. A recent multi-country survey revealed that 57% of South Africans expressed trust in AI systems. This number surpassed the global average. So what laws are needed to regulate AI in the country, and how can South Africa join the global discussion around this emerging technology? Let's discuss this now with AI ethics, risk and governance expert Emile Ormond, who joins us now via our video link. It's great to see you, Emile. Thanks very much indeed for making time. Part of my understanding is that the conversation around AI is slightly subdued in this country. Is that true? And if so, do we know why?
Yes, it's an excellent question. We have some anecdotal indications that show that people are very interested in AI. I think most of us have had discussions recently with our friends and family and have done some research ourselves. I do think there seems to be a gap in terms of our interest in regulating the space and having more critical and meaningful discussions, both with each other, but perhaps also with our political and policy leadership. And as to why, that's a little bit of a difficult question to answer. I suppose South Africa has many, many challenges, economic, political, social. So it's kind of natural, I think, that these would be perhaps more of a focus area for us. However, I think we're missing out on joining the global community, so to speak, in really critically looking at AI and considering it more deeply, which would be unfortunate because we're only getting this opportunity really kind of once. It's a limited shelf life for us to consider this.
Sure. I suppose part of the fundamental questions we still need to wrestle with is whether AI is a friend or a foe to South Africa. And I presume the answer to that question depends on in which context you're asking it.
Absolutely. And I think, it's important to say here that when I say we should be debating AI, I don't just mean the risks. It presents great opportunities and challenges and risks. So it's incumbent on us to look at it holistically. And yes, absolutely, AI, I think it's well known, and there's some survey data also that indicates South Africans are very concerned about AI in terms of job losses and job displacement, which again makes a lot of sense. South Africa is one of the highest rates of unemployment in the world. So this is, of course, something that we have to look at and consider very carefully. However, there are, broader risks as well to social and political stability and misinformation, spreading of propaganda. So, we should definitely care about AI and its impact on the workplace, which I think the government is aware of, but perhaps not as comprehensively as it should be.
Sure. I mean, and perhaps, your last statement there is worth us taking a step back. I mean, whether it's Siri with Apple, ChatGPT, or maybe just the algorithms on Google as you go about searching for things, AI itself feels like a pretty broad area of study or work. Do we have a definition of artificial intelligence? I mean, have we come to narrowing down what we mean when we speak about that?
So this is a very difficult one to answer because the academics and the machine learning or the AI engineers, designers are still debating this to this day. It's been an ongoing discussion. The problem, of course, is with the key component there being intelligence, right? It's kind of a moving target. 50 years ago, I think people would have considered the calculator intelligent. And today it's little more than a rudimentary electronic device. So it's a moving target. But when we generally talk about artificial intelligence, kind of referring to the recreation of elements of human cognitive ability. So these are tend to be things like reasoning, logic, identification. The thing is, it will keep on changing. It really is it's a moving target, and it speaks to how pervasive and broad the field is. The thing I think we need to keep in mind when we talk about artificial intelligence, which is a very broad term, and I don't always think it helps the debate, frankly, is that it's a general purpose technology. And what I mean by that is it defines a single use. So it's relevant potentially to any area of where we currently use human cognitive ability. So that really is almost everything, right? We interpret and understand the world through our minds.
Right.
So AI is like electricity. It's like the internet. It fuels multiple other areas. So its uses are almost limitless. And that's why it's so important. That's one of the key reasons why it's so important for us to start grappling with these issues now, while AI is still relatively underutilized in society in our daily lives. I often draw the comparison between social media, where 10, 15 years ago, social media was very useful. Few people used it. And now it's pervasive. Its influence is dramatic. I think all of us are on some form of social media. It helps shape how we make sense of the world around us in many extents. Yeah. And not just its obvious kind of political impact. So AI will definitely, it's always difficult to say how technology will develop, but definitely the trend is toward it becoming entrenched in our lives in ways that I think we might find difficult to understand now. That's why it's incumbent on us to really consider the risks and opportunities while we still have a chance.
Right. Speaking about social media, I certainly feel as a media practitioner that we haven't come anywhere near being able to regulate that space, for all kinds of reasons. I mean, even just the harmonizing of laws across geopolitical borders is quite difficult. A tweet in South Africa may be perfectly legal, but elsewhere in the continent, for instance, may get you behind bars. If we haven't been able to control that space, I mean, are we anywhere close to being able to control how AI is meant to be regulated?
Exactly. And that's why I think we're fortunate in a certain extent that we have this example, this very recent and still relevant example of social media that we haven't governed, as you correctly said. Countries around the world are still very much grappling with it. There are some areas like the European Union that are quite far advanced, that have rules in place, but even that they're struggling with it because it's a moving target. It constantly evolves, So yeah, this is by no way an easy thing to do. It will require a lot of coordinated effort globally, geopolitically, as you said, but also nationally. And I don't think in South Africa we should, because of these pressing challenges that we have, we're kind of on the periphery of the development of these technologies, right? Like most of it gets developed in the US, China, and to a lesser extent the European Union. That doesn't mean we shouldn't care and we shouldn't be part of this debate. I think we often kind of belittle the potential impact that we can have. There are international efforts underway. This is also on the UN's agenda. The important point is South Africa itself, as a country, as a government, needs to have a position, a clear one. We're a little bit behind in that extent, even compared to some of our African peers. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Rwanda in the last week released their own AI strategy national plan, which is very clear on what how the country wants to use AI, how it will try to ensure its ethical use, how it will try to mitigate any risks. South Africa being a middle-income country and often referred to as one of the most industrialized country in Africa, we really need to come to the party more and really be a leading voice and pull the continent, the African Union with us, and then be able to speak authoritatively in a global stage to ensure that we are beneficiaries of AI and not merely its victims or not merely just recipients of it for good and bad. Very much like social media, where it kind of was imported here, if you will,
right. And
we've never actually dealt with it to the extent. I'm not sure policymakers have fully grappled with the issue, as you very much like to point it out.
Absolutely. I mean, I wonder to what extent ethics features in those global debates. And if it does feature prominently, are you able to take us through perhaps some of the more interesting ethical dilemmas that we might face if, in fact, we do go ahead with artificial intelligence without clear regulation?
Yeah, so this is, of course, part of the problem, right? Like when you discuss regulation, when you discuss legislation, it needs to come from a value system. Needs to be based in something. So the discussion looks very different in China, for example, with a very different kind of model of government, perhaps, more confusion, more on a strong role of government and its role in society. Whereas in the US, for example, it's quite messy. a little bit like the politics there as well. So it's very much a reflection of that. I think in some extent in South Africa we're actually quite fortunate that I think our value system is quite well defined by the Constitution. We generally share, there's more similarities in our society than there is differences. So it's easier to understand how we want to shape this technology. That is not to say that we can't use and be influenced by what's conversations and laws and thinking on this that shape elsewhere. But it will require us to ask key questions about kind of where we're going, how this feeds into our socioeconomic dynamics. And that's why, not to belabor this point, I mentioned the kind of South Africa having a vision for AI, which is not just something the government should do. It should be both a top-down and a bottom-up effort, so that there's a holistic understanding in this country of how we can utilize this technology and other technologies. And that's part of the kind of fourth industrial revolution suite, if you will. AI is probably just the best known and particularly now the most popular one. But there's a lot for us to consider, and that can be pulled into kind of the country's development plans, if you will.
Sure. Absolutely. Fascinating discussion, and can't wait to see how we go about working our way through this. Emile Ormond, thanks very much indeed for helping us think through the main issues. Emile, of course, is a AI ethics, risk, and governance expert. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.